Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're doing something a little different. We're going to deconstruct the persuasive argument in a YouTube video, one that gives a personal prophecy to every single viewer. We're going to break down, step by step, exactly how it builds its case.
All right, so let's jump right in. The video kicks off with a really direct and personal question. This is designed to stop you in your tracks, right? To hook you immediately. It's not some abstract idea about history or theology. No, this is about you.
And then, bam, you get this opening statement from a speaker who calls himself Cardinal Joseph Monti. This sets the stakes sky high. It immediately creates this tone of authority, of urgency. Everything that comes next is framed as this super serious personal revelation meant just for you.
So after that setup, the video lays out the context for this big prophecy. The argument is, basically, if you're watching, you're probably already feeling a very specific kind of internal conflict. A mix of excitement, confusion, maybe even fear, all because you've heard that the Messiah, who they call Rael, is here on Earth.
Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting. The argument is designed to anticipate your doubt. But here's the twist. It doesn't treat your skepticism as a valid, logical response. Instead, it reframes any disbelief you might have as a series of, predictable psychological traps that your own mind is setting for you.
First up is something they call normalcy bias. The idea here is that even if you're staring at what they call overwhelming evidence, your brain is going to fight it. Why? Because we all crave comfort, that feeling of our normal everyday life, and this new information is anything but normal.
And here's the real kicker to that argument. The video claims this bias actually makes you actively talk yourself out of believing, not because the evidence isn't good enough, but because you just want to get back to your comfortable, predictable routine.
All right, trap number 2, cognitive dissonance. This one's for anyone with strong beliefs already. Doesn't matter if you're religious or an atheist. The video basically says if this new information about Rael totally clashes with your worldview, your mind just goes into this, crisis mode.
And this really gets to the heart of their whole argument. They're positioning comfort as the enemy of truth. The claim is that your mind will actually choose to reject solid proof, just because it's easier to stick with what feels familiar and, comfortable.
And that flows perfectly into the next trap, which you've probably heard of, confirmation bias. The video argues that as soon as you feel that internal conflict, you're going to start hunting. You'll actively look for any little piece of information. It doesn't even have to be strong, that backs up what you already believed and helps you dismiss this new message.
Yeah, and according to the speaker, let's be clear, this search isn't an honest quest for the truth. Nope. It's a mission to find justification, any justification at all, that lets you go back to your old, comfortable beliefs.
Okay, so what about the people who are actually convinced? Well, this next trap is for them. It's called analysis paralysis. They're supposedly overwhelmed by all the evidence, but instead of actually doing anything, they just get stuck researching and researching, trapped in this endless loop of indecision.
And they use a really powerful analogy here. It's designed to frame this inaction not as a simple mistake, but as a totally irrational and dangerous choice when you're facing, imminent danger.
Then, the speaker talks about a state he calls avoidance. This is pretty straightforward. You know it's true, but you just choose to ignore it. You hope that if you don't look at it, the whole thing will just go away. It's presented as this kind of childish reaction, really.
And this all ties back to what we heard earlier, right? It highlights their central argument that avoidance is just one more defense mechanism. It's a desperate attempt to hold on to that feeling of normal that we started with. So, finally, after all these traps, the source ties it all together. It points to one thing as the fundamental driver behind all the other traps, just plain old fear. But, and this is key, it's a very, very specific kind of fear.
What the video is ultimately claiming is that the fear of social judgment, what your friends, your family, your coworkers might think of you, is actually more powerful, more real to you than the fear of divine judgment on Judgment Day.
Okay, so once every possible reason for your doubt has been labeled a psychological trap, the video, it just completely shifts gears. The tone changes. We escalate from psychological analysis to these severe physical consequences of not believing, and they're attributed directly to Rael.
So the argument pivots hard. We're not talking about your internal psychology anymore. Now it's all about these stark, apocalyptic warnings. No longer why you might not believe, but what will happen to the world because you don't.
And it's not just one warning. It's a barrage. It's this rapid-fire sequence of claims, one right after the other, designed to create this overwhelming feeling of impending, unstoppable doom. There's really no time to even catch your breath, let alone question the logic.
This final image of total collapse really cements the threat. The stakes are now framed as complete societal destruction, and the message is crystal clear. That comfortable, normal world we talked about at the beginning, it's about to be destroyed. So clinging to it is just futile.
And all of this leads to the grand finale of the argument. It's the culmination of everything we've just heard. Now you, the viewer, are presented with a very clear, very urgent final choice.
The whole argument gets boiled down to this really stark black and white choice. There's absolutely no middle ground. You're told you either have to overcome all these supposed psychological flaws and do something, or you give in to your social fear and face the terrible consequences.
And then, here it is. The personal prophecy that was promised right at the start is finally revealed. But it's a conditional prophecy. It's one that directly connects all those psychological traps we just walked through with the ultimate consequence: eternal damnation.
So by defining any doubt as a personal psychological failing, the argument constructs this incredibly powerful ultimatum. It's not just presenting a case, it's trying to make the very act of disagreeing feel like a moral failure. It's just a fascinating example of how, in the world of persuasion, the frame you build around a choice can end up being more powerful than the choice itself.